My story begins in April of 1999. I was training for the Olympic team in the hammer throw event of track and field. I just fell in love with that event, and I was talented and succeeded. Went on to 2 collegiate championships and broke the collegiate record, and then found myself in the Olympic trials. So I was working to, break into that top 3 and make an Olympic team.
I'm going to see what I can do there, and I'm real anxious to try to go, 4 more years and have fun and see what I can do.
In 1993, I was a baby. I was born 90, so I was like 3. Children play together, singing, dancing, all of those fun things, because life is fun there.
So back in 2010, we were very much a normal family.
McKenna was 7, and she was fun, sassy, smart for her age, a lot of gymnastics, a lot of friends. It was good. It was a fun time. She was a fun kid.
As she walked down the street, you could almost feel this wake of happiness, whether it was her coming up with some crazy idea on bicycles or dragging a lemonade stand out to just raise funds for various causes.
That was an animated video by Jordan and McKenna Wetzel. This was our first. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'd just fallen deeply in love, met the woman of my dreams. We fell into a very, intense, passionate love affair and chose each other, as being the one. I ended up breaking off the relationship because it was so disrupting. I was still deeply and madly in love with that person, but it was too painful.
I lived with my grandparents in 1993 because my parents were in exile. Because in Rwanda back then, there was not a good atmosphere among ethnics back then, the Hutus and the Tutsis. So my family was a Tutsi family, and the Hutus were in power, and they did not feel like the Tutsis were supposed to exist.
McKenna, normally, volleyball was easy, and she couldn't quite touch the ball right. Things were getting past her. She was laughing it off. Something's not right, but my girl's laughing. She's having fun. I'm not giving it much thought, but it was the moment for me where I knew something's wrong.
So nobody really knew what was going on with me. And I had this perception that if I went and talked to a psychologist and told them what was really going on with me, that I would end up literally locked away in restraints and pumped full of drugs the rest of my life. And that might not have been the truth of what would have happened, but it was my perception, which therefore made it my reality.
It was April 6, 1994. Our president then, his plane crashed. He was coming from Arusha International Court to sign a peace agreement so that the Tutsis and the Hutus are going to live together. So they called out for all the Hutus to go out and hunt the Tutsis and kill them.
Her left eye started to slide over. She threw up several times in the morning for almost a week. We went to the doctor several times. They said it was a virus, but kind of mama's intuition is like, no, there's something more to this.
Things took a very dramatic turn, and I ended up going headfirst down a flight of concrete steps. I landed right on top of my head, ended up shattering 2 bones at the base of my neck, badly crushed my spinal cord. I woke up in the hospital, paralyzed from the neck down. The doctors came in and told me that's the kind of injury that typically people don't recover from, and that I could expect to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair.
We stayed overnight and then had an MRI, and that MRI was conclusive that it was DIPG, or diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, which is fatal upon diagnosis.
There was a lot of people fleeing from the killers. When something like that happens, you don't really know where you're going, you're just going. I had no idea what was going on, and I ran as well. I lost my cousin's hand, and I found myself in the home of a perpetrator. They lined everyone up and started killing everyone.
This so-called accident wasn't an accident. I intentionally dove headfirst down that flight of concrete steps, willfully kept my arms to my side with the intention of killing myself. because of the intense emotional pain and trauma that got triggered for me in that romantic relationship.
I was lined up with all those people, and then when they got to me, an elderly man heard. He heard, and he from inside the house, and he came out. That's when he told them before they kill me, they should go through him first because they have children no different from me, and those were his children. He rushed and saved me.
And within those 3 days, we went from being this normal family, enjoying things family do, to we're in the hospital being told your daughter has 9 to 18 months to live and that her brain tumor is going to take her life.
I always feel like if he wasn't there, I wouldn't be here right now. So
my initial reaction was, I need to get out of here. I couldn't breathe. Somebody had just told me that my child, who was active and happy and fun and smart, had a death sentence.
I mean, you're dealing with a 7-year-old little girl who's still smiling and joking with her grandparents in a hospital. There's no reason to obviously share that information so soon.
Days later, when I woke up in the hospital, one of the first things that flashed through my mind was, oh shit. I hadn't expected to be here. One of the next things was that, I was being punished for what I tried to do.
I was angry at everyone and everything. I couldn't see why God would create life if we're meant to suffer. And that really confused me.
Those initial days, you're in shock. It's like the death has already happened, so you're grieving at the same time your child is living. You're scared, you're angry, you're all of these different emotions, and you're searching for hope.
My coach came to visit me in person, and I told him privately what had really happened, that I'd done that on purpose, that it wasn't an accident. And he looked right back at me and he said, you can never tell anyone. So for a number of years, I kept that hidden secret. And looking back on that, I know that he was trying to protect me, but that also reinforced the story that I'd been telling myself, which is what had me make that choice in the first place.
After genocide, I reunited with my family, my parents, my mom and my father, and I expected love of a parent, but it was not there because everything, as you can imagine, everything in the country was a mess, and there was no really space for giving that kind of love because everyone had lost everything.
To still be able to lie next to her and hold her and tell her how much I loved her, and remind her, how beautiful she was. There wasn't much that she could say other than maybe a crack of a smile or a moment of she knew, but it was also so painful because every time you said it, you were worried it was the last time you would get to do it. And so in the context of, memories, it's a hard memory, but I also can tell you, every contour of the crack of her smile or what her eyes looked like that day.
I was selected among influential students in my school to go to the museum, Genocide Museum in Kigali. I found myself in a room of children who were victims of the genocide, who were killed. And that moment when I was in the room and reading their last words, what they said before they were killed, what they loved and their dreams, their hopes for the future, that was the first time I ever appreciated life and appreciate everything I've had, because at least I had the chance to live. I had the chance to be 18. Someone did not have that chance.
Later that evening, my coach called me on the phone. Of all things, he challenged me. He said, okay, well, are you going to fight and make yourself well? Or are you going to give up and quit? And I was livid. I was beyond pissed.
We had a conversation. I asked him if he wanted to recover 100%. He said yes. I said, okay.
The engineer, but also the champion in me was, faced with that decision. The logic was pretty simple. I've got to fight and make myself well. I'm going to recover 100% and walk out of here. faced with that situation, I had to try. I can't say that I had 100% conviction or knowing or belief in that. But I knew that just by having that vision, having that intention, and speaking it, that it was at least possible.
I was always in a victim mode, but then this time I realized that I can really take my future in my own hands and try to show other fellow students or children that if you're still breathing, there's hope always. It's going to be okay. Everything changed because I was not angry anymore.
When Makenna passed away, our very good friend next door, Lisa, who was a second mom to her, had arranged for her tumor to be donated if we so wished. At that point, all we knew, was that we didn't want any other child or family to go through what we were going through. And so anything that we could do to help make sense of Makenna's death and to help the next child, even though we hadn't talked about it before when it was presented, we both said yes.
One of the things that I did as I started to let go of my Olympic pursuits as an athlete and kind of got to a place of acceptance and completion, with that Olympic dream. I worked briefly as a coach at the Olympic Training Center and then with US Paralympics. And while I loved that, with the experience that I had, I knew that I had a much bigger difference and a much wider audience that I wanted to reach.
Before Makenna passed away, our community, our neighborhood had a party called Party with a Purpose. 1,000 people showed up, and it was at that point to raise funds for Makenna's treatment. She lived about 7 weeks after that party. And so the funding from that, almost $70,000, was sitting there. And after her death and after several weeks, we thought, well, we need to do something with this. What are we going to do? So that's when we really decided that we needed to do something formal. So the McKenna Claire Foundation started literally in our next door neighbor's kitchen, around the kitchen table. We're very blessed in that we have friends who are lawyers and marketers, and everybody kind of fell into place and said, how can we help?
I'm inspiring as many people as I can. I've spoken at Google Talks.
In the curriculums, they should really include peace building. They should teach children to love each other and just be as if you're teaching a history, but have the importance of peace.
I've spoken in women's prison, universities, museums. I mentor children anywhere they need some inspiration.
So these days, one of the things I love to do is coach and consult and support people wherever they may be at with whatever challenges and adversity they might be facing, in overcoming the inner and outer barriers to their success, to moving forward in life, to achieving their goals and even their wildest dreams, in a way that's really making a bigger impact and contributing to others in whatever way that looks like.
Under the worst of circumstances, we discovered we were surrounded by the best of community. And the McKenna Claire Foundation's birth is rooted in always having a fun mentality or a fun outlook on what can be done. Act like you're 8 years old. Let's push that energy out into the world.
I love writing, and it was my only way of sharing when I was growing up. Was writing my emotions, and that was my healing process. And I was like, in a way for me to heal all of this, I need to write it. If I'm sharing, I can't be repeating it all the time, but if I write it, someone somewhere will land on the book, and because of what they will be going through, they will say, you know what, life is actually fine. So
Party with a Purpose has always been ground zero, I guess. They've come to kind of expect that it's a joyous occasion with a very somber purpose, and that's not forgotten in it, but then there's a celebration.
Really, my TEDx talk last year, 18 years after that injury, was when I set myself free from that vow of silence for that first time. And now forever, even though that's still part of me and my life experience, it never will have the hold on me that it did before. I will always own it more than it will own me. I've been much more freed up and opened up to speak and to impact different audiences with that message. And one of the best things is, I used to be in this 7-foot circle, training for the Olympics and, this big stage and this big limelight. And so now getting to be on stages in front of audiences, I get to have a version of that exhilaration and that rush. And it's not just the pleasure and the charge that it is for me, but it's so much about what I get to contribute to whoever I get to speak with.
I'm writing my second book, which I'm really, really excited about. There's more light to it because my life is not just the 100 days or my 10 first years, but the life I'm creating, the life I've been creating in the last 7 years or so. My first maybe 15 years of my life will be this little tiny piece of a memory, and I will create more beautiful memories in my life, but that's still there. It's my past. I can't change that, but it's a past that makes me who I am.
One of our annual campaigns is Stand Up and Shine. The highlight of that being kids and their personal investment in Makenna's story to a little girl they never met, and having the pride to say, I'm going to do something to help the next kid. They come by and they'll greet us at our own door and say, I raised $29 for Makenna's charity. I wish I had more. And I get to look them in the eye and say, how do you know that that's not the best $29 or that that's not the one that matters the most? And to have them then turn around and go, I may have solved cancer, or I at least know now that I've made a difference in the world. That empowerment is probably the most important thing that I get to do.
Stand up and shine for pediatric brain cancer.
It is turning a true sad moment into something so powerful. Turning lemons into lemonade very much is what we are trying to do.
While the doctors thought that I was in denial, maybe I had a brain injury, they did all these other tests, all these other people were reflecting to me how inspiring it was that I'm there as this talking head saying I'm going to recover. But the pivotal thing was making that decision to strive for something beyond what was currently available and what all the immediate evidence seemed to be presenting.
What we tell ourselves, it manifests. So if the only thing I know is that when you're a survivor, you are fragile, I end up believing that. And that becomes my reality. And that's how my life is run. But when there's an awareness that when you've survived something, that actually thing happened for you to be stronger, to help other people. You're not fragile. You're actually stronger than anybody who's never been through what you went through.
It was not just about us anymore. And we wanted to share that with others. Once you share your story, people will come to you and share similar stories of struggle, or they'll come to you and say, if you can do it, I can do it.
You need someone to talk to so they help you navigate how to come out of that fine and find light at the end of the tunnel. There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
One of the most courageous things that you can do is to tell the truth, to ask for help. And in opening that up, not only do you have an access to truly being known in all of your humanity, but to some new possibilities, to some kind of healing, to something changing, and to getting love and support from other people. Because I believe fundamentally, most people want to help others.
And that's the beauty in all this. It's the silver lining, I guess, when you look at it, is for whatever reason, when you reach out, it empowers somebody else to take a chance.
By putting yourself out there and telling your story, it may hurt a little bit, it makes yourself vulnerable, but you'll also be in shock that the world wants to help. We're very much a global world that is connected now 1 degree. You have the power to change the world very quickly, and don't waste that opportunity.